Let's read Pete the Cat's Coolest Stories collection by James Dean. Hey friends, before we begin our exciting read aloud story, please subscribe to our channel by tapping the subscribe button below. Thanks!
And keep reading!
Pete the Cat. I love my white shoes. Pete the Cat was walking down the street in his brand new white shoes. Pete loved his white shoes so much, he sang the song.
I love my white shoes. I love my white shoes. I love my white shoes.
Oh no! Pete stepped in a large pile of
Blueberries. Strawberries.
What color did it turn his shoes?
Red.
Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no.
He kept walking along, singing his song. Everything is cool.
I love my red shoes. I love my red shoes.
Oh no! Pete stepped in a large.
I love raspberries.
No, blueberries. What color did it turn his shoes? Blue. Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no.
He kept walking along and singing his song. I love my blue shoes. I love my blue shoes. I love my blue shoes. Oh no! Pete stepped in a large puddle of mud. What color did it turn his shoes? Brown. Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no.
He kept walking along and singing his song. Groovy.
I love my brown shoes. I love my brown shoes. I love my brown shoes.
Oh no! Pete stepped in a bucket of water and all
The brown, all the blue, all the red washed away. What color was his shoes again?
white.
But now they were wet.
Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no.
He kept walking along and singing his song.
I love my wet shoes. I love my wet shoes. I love my wet shoes.
The moral of Pete's story is no matter what you step in, keep walking along and singing your song. Because it's
All good.
the end.
Hello. Come, I'll drop you off in the next book.
Pete the Kitty Goes to the Doctor by Kimberly and James Dean. Pete the Kitty wakes up. It is time to go to school. Pete stretches his arms. He stretches his legs. Ouch! Pete's belly hurts. Pete calls his dad.
My belly does not feel groovy.
He says. Pete's dad feels his head.
You do not have a fever.
Dad says.
You just need some rest.
Dad tucks Pete back into his bed. Dad kisses Pete's head. Pete pulls up his covers. He thinks he will have a cool day at home. Pete starts to play with his trains. Then Pete starts to paint a picture.
It is time to get dressed.
Dad says,
It is time to go to the doctor.
Pete does not want to go to the doctor. Pete is scared of the doctor. Dad says,
The doctor is cool. She is not scary.
Dad takes Pete to the doctor's office. They wait their turn. The waiting room is fun. Pete gets to play with lots of far-out toys. The nurse comes for Pete. She takes him to another room. The nurse checks for a fever. The doctor comes in. She checks Pete's ears. She checks Pete's eyes. The doctor feels Pete's belly. She listens to Pete's heart. The doctor even lets Pete listen to her heart. Don't worry, the doctor says. It is just a bellyache. The doctor gives Pete a cool sticker. She tells Pete to rest. Dad takes Pete home. Dad lets Pete rest in bed. Pete will feel better soon. Dad was right. The doctor was not scary. She was nice. Pete feels better. Soon he will be back to his groovy self again.
The end. Readers, now let's dive into our next story and discover the adventures waiting for us.
Pete's Big Lunch by James Dean.
Here comes
Pete! Lunch!
It is lunchtime. Pete is ready to eat.
What should Pete eat? A sandwich would be nice. Yes, Pete wants a sandwich. Pete opens the fridge.
He takes out a loaf of bread. He finds a yummy fish. He adds tomatoes.
And mayo.
Pete looks at his sandwich.
It is too small. Something is missing. Pete knows what it needs. His sandwich needs an apple. Pete loves apples. His sandwich needs crackers. Crackers are crunchy. Pete loves crunchy crackers.
Pete looks at his sandwich again.
It is still too small. Pete is very hungry. Pete adds a pickle. Pete adds cheese. Pete adds an egg. 2 hot dogs. A banana. And a can of beans. Something is missing. Pete adds ice cream. He takes 3 huge scoops. Pete's sandwich is too big for Pete to eat. Pete wonders what to do. Pete thinks and thinks. I've got it, Pete says.
Pete calls all of his friends. He asks them to come over. Everyone goes to Pete's house.
They are all very hungry. Pete shows them his big lunch. Are you hungry? Asks Pete. Pete's sandwich is big enough for everyone. Dig in, says Pete.
Pete's sandwich is good. Pete's sandwich is very good.
Pete's sandwich is all gone.
Pete's friends are full. They liked Pete's big lunch.
Thanks for lunch, Pete's friends say.
Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome, Pete says. Sharing is cool.
The end. Ready for some fun? Let's go! Pete the Cat's Groovy Imagination by Kimberly and James Dean.
Pete the cat was happy. Today would be so much fun. Chilling out, catching vibes, sand, surfing, and lots of sun. But when Pete looked outside, he got down in the dumps sad. Dark clouds and pouring rain could make this good day turn bad. Pete didn't complain. He did not feel blue. Pete knew he could find something fun to do. Pete drew a cool picture. Pete strummed a little tune. Until he saw something too good to be true. Pete found a big box. He looked it up and down. He turned it side to side. And he spun it all around. The box was brown, and it was strong. The box was wide and tall. Maybe this wasn't just any box after all. This box rocks! The box was big, and it was groovy. The box could be something new. Suddenly, Pete's imagination grew and grew and grew. Maybe it was more than a box. Maybe it was more than it seemed. Pete closed his eyes and had an out-of-this-world dream. It was more than just a box. It was a groovy rocket ship. He saw the moon on his outer space trip. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! Pete was heading home. He landed splash in the sea. Pete had to think fast. Now, what could this box be? The box was big and it was groovy. The box could be something new. Suddenly, Pete's imagination grew and grew and grew. The box was now a yellow submarine. Pete dived way down into the sea. Pete wore his goggles to see the underwater scene. The submarine crashed. When it reached the land, now the box was lying sideways in the sand. But what's a cat to do with a box that couldn't stand? The box was big and it was groovy. The box could be something new. Suddenly, Pete's imagination grew and grew and grew. And pretty soon, the box was not just a box laying on its side. It was a cool cat race car, revving for a fast, fast ride. Zoom, zoom, zoom! Pete won the race just like that. Then splat! The race car went flat. Now what good is a box that looks like a mat? The box was big, and it was groovy. The box could be something new. Suddenly, Pete's imagination grew and grew and grew. Even though a flat box was not in the plan, Pete imagined it was a stage for his jammin' rock band. Sometimes our plans just don't go right, but it doesn't mean the day can't be out of sight. If you use your imagination, you will see just how groovy your day can be. When you want to dream of something new, thinking outside the box is the grooviest thing to do.
The end.
Before we jump into the next tale, let's subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.
Pete the Cat Checks Out the Library by James Dean.
Pete's mom is taking him to the library for the first time. The librarian gives Pete his very own library card.
Cool!
Says Pete. The librarian smiles.
Time for the tour.
The librarian takes Pete through the library. There is a big desk where people wait to check out books. Pete sees some of his friends reading at a long table. It's very peaceful and quiet. How relaxing. The librarian takes Pete to her favorite room. There are lots of Pete-sized chairs and tables and shelves. There are books of every shape, size, and color.
What do I do now?
Pete asks.
Now you read a book.
The librarian says.
Which book should I read?
Asks Pete.
You can read any book you like,
says the librarian. Pete looks around. There are so many books. Pete picks up a book all about airplanes and jets. He reads it and pretends he's a stunt pilot. He flies a super fast jet and does loop-the-loops and spirals high in the sky. Then Pete finds a book with dragons, wizards, and unicorns on the cover. He reads it and imagines that he is a powerful wizard using magic spells and a special wand to defend his castle against a fire-breathing dragon. Next, Pete opens up a book about spiders and insects. He reads it and imagines that he is a scientist studying all types of critters in the wild. He has to be very still to study some critters and very fast to study others. Then Pete chooses a book with all sorts of scary monsters on the cover. It is a book of fairy tales. Pete reads it and pretends that he is in a dark, spooky forest trying to outsmart a big, bad wolf. Pete puts that book back on the shelf. It is too scary. Pete opens up a book about the pyramids in Egypt. He reads it and pretends that he is an explorer riding a camel across the desert and climbing to the top of a giant pyramid. Next, Pete picks a book with all sorts of robots on the cover. He reads it and imagines that he is a robot at a robot dance party. His arms and legs make whizzing sound when Robot Pete speaks. He says,
Bleep, bloop, bleep.
Next, Pete picks up a book about superheroes. He reads it and makes believe that he is a superhero. He flies around the city in a colorful cape, chasing bad guys and saving the day. Then Pete spots a big book about the ocean and all its creatures. He reads it and imagines that he is a scientist in a submarine deep in the Atlantic Ocean looking for whales, squids, and sharks. There are so many wonderful books to read at the library. Pete can be whatever he imagines with a book.
Reading is super groovy.
The end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel by hitting the big red subscribe button below. And check out more fun stories on our channel.